The farmer is shocked to see a disabled child crying for help in the street. Thunder rumbled like angry giants in the sky as Thomas hurried down the bustling street, the rain pouring in sheets. His tailored suit clung to him, $1 million armor against the world. Cars splashed through puddles and voices melded into a chaotic symphony. But amidst it all, a sound broke through. The soft, desperate cries of a child. It sliced through the noise like a knife. He paused, heart racing, as the haunting echo of sorrow tugged at something deep within him. Drawn by instinct, he turned into a narrow alley. The rain muffled, but didn't wash away the despair that hung heavy in the air. Shadows danced between piles of discarded boxes and broken dreams. His breath caught when he spotted her. A small, wet figure huddled against the cold pavement. A 7-year-old girl, with tears streaming down her cheeks, her tiny hands gripping the framework of a tattered teddy bear. She looked up, and her gaze held an eerie familiarity, igniting something inside him, a flicker of recognition he couldn't name. "Help me," she whimpered, her voice barely above a whisper. Yet it resonated like a war cry. Thomas knelt beside her, water pooling around his knees. Whether from the rain or his own heavy heart, he couldn't tell. Compassion surged through him like electricity, igniting his senses. This child needed him, needed something he hadn't given anyone in years. "What's your name?" he asked, voice shaky. "Lily," she replied, her eyes wide, glistening like the raindrops that clung to her lashes. The name echoed in his mind. Lily. Something twisted inside him. Could this child be the connection he never knew he had? The layers of his lavish life, filled with power lunches and boardroom battles, seemed suddenly meaningless. In that moment, he felt the weight of his success crushing him. Was it worth it? He reached for her, but he was engulfed by trepidation. What if this was a mistake? What would people think? The society he navigated thrived on appearances. The whispers of judgment fueled his fear. "Just hold on," he whispered, more to himself than her. Before he could utter another word, the crack of thunder broke the stillness, punctuated by the blaring of a car horn nearby. The world surged back around them, rapidly closing in. With renewed determination, he lifted her delicate frame, the chill of the wet pavement still clinging to her. A beacon of hope flickered. Could he truly save her? But as the attention of the bystanders shifted toward them and a camera flashed from a nearby corner, the weight of their gaze felt heavier than ever. Thomas's face morphed from resolve to anxiety as whispers flared up around him. Who is that man, and why is he with that girl? In the days that followed, the media frenzy swept through his life like wildfire. Rumors bloomed, and a hostile business partner saw this as an opportunity to strike. The connection they forged amidst the chaos began to fracture as darkness from Thomas's past loomed large. He hired private investigators, desperate to shield Lily from the fallout. Each inquiry revealed buried truths, secrets he'd wished to forget. As shadows of doubt crept into his mind, he realized he was on the brink of something monumental yet frightening. A battle with the past, the weight of his choices, and the fragile bond with a girl he barely knew. But just when Thomas thought he could grasp the threads of a future with Lily, a shocking twist left him reeling, staring into an abyss of uncertainty, where love and trust seemed as slippery as the rain-soaked streets they found. Just give that red button down below a quick check to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content coming your way. And while you're at it, leave a powerful like that helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact! As Thomas wrestled with the growing storm of uncertainty in his heart, a flicker of warmth from Lily reminded him of the hope they could build together. Yet, as whispers grew louder, questioning his intentions, he felt the tightening noose around his conscience. Just as he was about to pull Lily closer, still cradled in his arms, he heard a shout that jolted him to attention. "Step away from her! Now!" At first, Thomas thought it was a bad joke, but when he turned, his heart plummeted. A man, a towering figure with wild hair and eyes like storm clouds, stood at the alley's mouth, finger pointed at him like a gun. The scent of desperation rolled off him, mingling with the rain-soaked air. I said, "Back off!" People on the street began to stir, turning their heads toward the scene. Fear rippled through them like a wave. Thomas's mind raced. Who was this man? And why was he yelling at them? Lily trembled in his arms. The earlier flicker of hope snuffed out. The moment felt like clashing thunder, a blaring alarm of chaos. Thomas whispered to her gently, "It's okay, just hold on to me." But even he could feel the tremor beneath his reassurance. The man stepped closer, his breath ragged. You don't know who she is." There was panic in his voice, raw and potent. "She's not just a girl, she's—" Suddenly, before he could finish, the application of a heavy footfall echoed behind Thomas. He turned, just in time, to see a police officer rushing toward them. "Step away from the child," the officer barked, his voice sharp and commanding. The tension in the air crackled. "No! Wait! Listen!" Connor shouted, desperation boiling over the icy chill that clutched at him. But the officer was already honed in, grounding his stance. The world around them slid into slow motion, each heartbeat resounding like a drum in his ears. Before he could find the words to explain, the man lunged forward. In that frenzied moment, he thrust a crumpled paper into Lily's hands. Thomas watched as her small fingers unfolded it, confusion twisting her features. An electrifying silence fell, tension thickening the air. The words on the paper seemed to sizzle with energy, and when Lily read aloud, it felt like the world gasped. "Your father, I'm sorry, I thought you were lost, but he's been looking for you." Reality snapped back with a violent jolt. The ground beneath them seemed to reconfigure. Panic danced in Thomas's chest. "What? Lily, is this true?" His thoughts swirled. The weight of a lost father. A search gone wrong. What did this all mean? In the crowd, shocked gasps reverberated back at him. Whispers washed over them. the sea of voices turning tumultuous. Thomas felt the eyes of judgment settle on him. What did they see? A man trying to help? Or someone who would snatch a child away from danger? Before he could process this new dilemma, the officer advanced, hand on his holstered weapon. "I need you to step back, now!" Thomas's mind was a whirlwind, battling with fear and confusion. Lily's eyes flickered between him and the stranger, uncertainty radiating from her small frame. "Thomas?" she asked softly, a plea woven into her voice. He responded, heart racing, "I don't know what's happening, Lily, but we'll figure this out." And then, as chaos erupted, a scream pierced the air, loud and shattering, pulling everyone's attention. A third figure slipped into the scene, a woman with familiar features, drenched and wild-eyed. "Lily!" she cried, reaching out. "I'm your mother!" The world tipped on its axis, trust shattered, secrets pulled taut like a drawn bowstring, ready to snap. Thomas stood, frozen, at the brink of an unfathomable chasm, staring helplessly as everything he thought he knew unraveled before his eyes. The storm surged, threatening to wash away not only the rain, but their very lives. The world tilted again, warped by confusion and fear. Thomas stood frozen, heart racing, as Lily's mother, her voice breaking, called out, "Lily!" The name echoed like a shot in the night, and he could see the turmoil in her eyes, wild with a mix of desperation and anger. But before he could respond, his attention snagged on the stranger, the man who had brought the crumpled paper. He was still shouting, "You don't understand! She's in danger!" Panic etched into every feature. Thunder rolled again, loud enough to drown the murmurs of the crowd. But the tension was alive as a live wire, sparking with each breath they took. "I'm her mother!" the woman gasped. Only steps away now, each heartbeat drawing. But every inch had Thomas questioning everything. Who was this woman? How did she know Lily? And more troubling, what was the truth behind Lily's disappearance? Suddenly, in the blink of an eye, the stranger lunged again. "You have to listen to me!" he shouted, clutching at Thomas's sleeve as if it would somehow tether him to sanity. "They're coming! You need to protect her!" At that moment, a piercing scream sliced through the air. Sharp and piercing, it wasn't from the crowd, but unmistakably from Lily, her small voice cracking. "No! Let go of him!" "I don't want to go back." Thomas felt a jolt deep in his gut. "Go back? Back to where?" His voice barely cut through the noise, but his heart raced with possibilities, each one worse than the last. Was Lily being held against her will? What kind of life had she led before this moment? Before anyone could answer, a dark SUV screeched to a halt beside them, tires kicking up water as the engine roared. A door slammed open, and men dressed in dark suits spilled out. Urgency in every stride. They shouted commands, voices frantic. "Get her, now!" the crowd buzzed. A swarm of shocked gasps, but Thomas stood in place, paralyzed. The world flashed around him, Lily's terrified face, the chaos erupting as agents moved forward, and the stranger shouting warnings. "They won't stop!" "Thomas, please!" Lily cried, her eyes wide with fear. Tears glistened, and he couldn't help but feel the weight of every heartbreak behind them. With all his strength, Thomas cradled her close. He had to protect her, shield her from whatever nightmare lurked at the edge of reality. But the words of the stranger echoed in his mind like thunder. "She's in danger." And then, in a sudden twist unlike anything he imagined, the man shouted, "She's not just your average girl. She has a special gift. They want to exploit her." The declaration hung in the air, thick and heavy. The world around them buzzed with questions. The live feed of a nearby camera turned their way, capturing every moment for the hungry onlookers. Just as Thomas's mind began to spiral, a surge of clarity emerged. Lily was more than a lost child. She was a key to something far greater, something powerful. In an instant, the scene ignited. The approaching figures raced toward them. Thomas hardened his resolve. But as he looked down at Lily, he saw something else entirely. Something he hadn't recognized before. Fear mingled with something else in her gaze. Something like recognition. Could it be? "Lily, do you know what's happening?" he whispered, feeling the heartbeat of the storm grow louder. Her eyes held secrets he hadn't seen before. A shimmer of knowledge danced within them, as if she possessed truths buried deep within her soul. I thought I was free," she murmured, confusion painting her voice. Thomas felt the ground beneath him tremble. A new reality dawned, one that changed everything. In that moment he realized nothing was as it seemed. The past, present, and future twisted around them, spiraling away from his grasp like the rain falling through his fingers. And then, before he could process this shocking turn, a shout pierced the air. "Thomas, look out!" He turned. Fear washed over him, stinging like the icy rain. A figure loomed. More than just the men in suits approaching. It was someone he hadn't expected, standing at the edge of chaos, heart racing between uncertainty and dread. The truth hung heavy like the thick clouds above, threatening to burst. His own past, the very choices he'd made, echoing back in violent clarity, poised to collide with his hopes for Lily. A memory flickered, and a chilling realization swept through him. A truth he didn't want to face was surfacing. And as he stared into Lily's frightened eyes, he knew one thing for sure. Whatever, Thomas stood paralyzed, heart racing. The world seemed to collapse around him. Desperation swirled like the storm above, thick and suffocating. Lily's mother? Was she really her mother? And what about the stranger's warning? His mind raced, a cacophony of doubts. Fear gripped his chest, each breath coming harder than the last. Suddenly, everything exploded into chaos. The men in suits surged forward, shoving through the crowd with ruthless determination. "Get her!" one yelled, his voice sharp and commanding. The crowd gasped, a wave of panic spreading like wildfire. Thomas tightened his grip on Lily, holding her as if she were the last flicker of light in an encroaching darkness. "Run!" screamed the man from before, his eyes wild with fear. "There!" But in that final moment, he was cut off. A blinding flash sparked through the air. A loud crack echoed in the alleyway. The crowd gasped, hands flying to mouths, eyes wide in shock. The sound was unlike anything Thomas had ever heard, sharp and all-consuming. A flash of light dazzled him, blurring his vision. Lily screamed, her tiny body trembling against his, and he could feel the weight of fear pressing down on them both. In an instant, the man crumpled to the ground, a dark figure collapsing under the sudden wave of chaos. Thomas stared, eyes widening as the truth hit him like a wall. Gunshots! Time froze as everything erupted into sheer madness. Shouts of terror filled the air, confused voices blending into a dissonance of cries. But the horror didn't stop there. More figures emerged from the darkness, shadows flanking the retreating men in suits. Each one was armed, faces obscured by dark hoods. Thomas's blood ran cold. They moved with precision, eyes darting searchingly. No longer a rescue mission. This was an extraction. "Lily, we have to go!" he shouted, voice breaking. But his legs felt rooted to the ground, pulse thundering in his ears. The world spun out of control. Lily clung to him, her small fingers digging into his jacket. "Thomas, I'm scared," she cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. Before he could respond, a deep voice thundered through the chaos, marked by a familiar tone that sent shards of ice through him. "Get away from her!" Thomas's gaze shot up. The voice was low and menacing, but there was something in it that twisted in his heart. He felt an overwhelming surge of confusion as he turned to face the man who had entered the fray last. His own father. The one he had tried to escape from years ago. "What are you doing here?" Thomas yelled, anger and betrayal mixing like fire and ice. His father approached, eyes searching as if trying to tear through the madness. "I came to protect you. Protect her." "But she's not," Thomas began, but before he could finish, reality shattered around him yet again. The stranger, still sprawled on the ground, began to writhe, and at his feet, a mist started to rise. It shimmered with a strange, otherworldly energy. Lily gasped, her eyes drawn to it. "What is that?" Thomas's heart sank. No, no, no! The mist swirled violently, and a powerful force burst forth. The air crackled like electricity, a blinding white light exploding from the ground. It surged upward, cascading in waves, an immeasurable power unleashing itself. In that moment, everything changed. Thomas felt the wave wash over him, and suddenly, memories began flooding back. Memories he had buried deep, choices he had made, shadows of his past twisted around him, morphing into shapes he once knew. And then Lily's voice echoed, sharp and clear. "Thomas, I can feel it. I can feel the truth." His father's eyes widened in terror. "No, not her! She can't!" But before he could finish, the flash reached its zenith. A shockwave rippled through the alley, sending everyone sprawling. Thomas felt himself being thrown back, powerless as the ground above him shimmered and the truth began to unfold. Blurring lines he thought were clearly drawn. As the light faded, darkness pressed close, and a heavy silence fell. "Wait, what just happened?" Thomas whispered, breathless. But the question hung in the air, an echo bouncing off the realization that everything he thought he understood shattered, uncertain like the remnants of a storm. Whatever came next stayed hidden in the shadows, stronger and more dangerous than anyone could imagine. "Wait, what just happened?" Thomas whispered, breathless. Everything felt heavy. The silence wrapped around him like a blanket. Confusion settled in his gut. He looked at Lily. Her eyes were wide, filled with fear and something else, something deep. And then he noticed the crowd. They stood frozen, mouths agape, eyes darting back and forth like pinballs. Suddenly, the world erupted again. A piercing scream jolted him. Thomas spun around, straining against the swirl of chaos. It came from the dark figure on the ground. The stranger, the one who had told them to run. His body twitched violently, convulsing. "Help him!" someone in the crowd shouted, but before Thomas could even process it, the man's features morphed into something unrecognizable. The air shifted, each breath feeling like a struggle. Strands of mist, still shimmering, poured from him, an ethereal glow that enveloped the alley. "Stop!" someone yelled, but the scene had morphed into a nightmare. Thomas felt something stir within him, a pull towards that mist, as if it were alive. "Lily, we have to go!" he urged, but she didn't move. Her eyes locked onto the dying man, entranced and fearful. "Lily, please!" Then, with a suddenness that stole the air from Thomas's lungs, the mist coiled upward and twisted into a spiral, illuminating the dark sky. And right before his eyes, the stranger's face shifted again. Changes that felt unnaturally grotesque. A voice boomed from within the mist, echoing as if the ground itself were speaking. "I am not who you think I am!" The colour drained from Thomas's face. The onlookers gasped, horror colouring their expressions. "What?" Thomas whispered, glancing at Lily, whose wide eyes felt like they were piercing through the chaos. "Who are you?" she called, voice trembling. But the stranger just shook his head as if fighting against an unseen force. "Listen to me! You all are in danger! She doesn't know! She was never meant to leave!" Before he could finish, the mist surged, thunder rolling above them, lightning illuminating the chaos. Then, under the swirl, the ground quaked with a force that tossed everyone off balance. Thomas stumbled, arms tightening around Lily as they fell into the muddy street. "Lily, stay close!" But as he reached for her, he saw with a sinking dread that the mist began to form figures around them. Faces he recognized and ones he didn't. A figure emerged from the shadows, lurking just at the edge of Thomas's vision. No, it couldn't be. A woman stepped forward, drenched and wild. It was his mother! "Thomas, don't trust him! He's not telling you the truth! You have to run!" Her voice was frantic, the desperation raw as she pointed at the stranger, who had now shifted into something more terrifying. "Mom!" he choked out, heart racing. "What's happening?" "Well, get away from her!" she shouted again as the mist began to weave tighter around them, revealing blurred images of faces, their features hidden in the flickering light. "Mom, who?" But something unexpected bubbled through the chaos, a heavy weight crashing down on his heart. The realization hit him like a punch. Lily's voice cut through everything. "I was never lost, was I?" The silence that followed was deafening. The glimmer of hope faded. Crushed under the weight of an ancient truth, Thomas looked at her, shock coursing through him. while the figure that once appeared as a stranger bared a wicked grin. A truth far deeper than he had ever imagined lay before them, twisting reality into a terrifying trap. "Who is she?" somebody yelled from the crowd, but the question fell flat, absorbed by the mounting tension. Thomas's heart raced, confusion tightening his chest. The storm outside raged, intertwining with the storm brewing inside him. Each flash of lightning sparking clarity. And as everything teetered on the edge of revelation, he felt the stinging realization that the battle for Lily's freedom had just begun. "What did you mean she was never meant to leave?" he spat, desperation mixing with fear. The figure's laughter echoed through the alley, haunting and deep. And with that chilling sound, Thomas understood. The truth was only beginning to unravel, leaving him teetering on the precipice of a nightmare. Thomas's heart raced wildly, battling disbelief, fear, and a flicker of determination. A voice boomed from the mist, and his mother's frantic pleas connected like wires, sparking confusion and dread. "Thomas, get her out! They'll take her!" The urgency of her words cut through the chaos like a knife. But before he could respond, the stranger, still on the ground, convulsed vilely. The swirling mist coiled tighter, wrapping around Lily and Thomas, drawing them in as if the air itself whispered secrets meant only for their ears. Thomas felt the energy shift, sharp and unsettling, as darker shadows emerged from the depths of the alley. It wasn't just confusion anymore. It was impending doom. Then a blinding flash erupted again. Thomas shielded his eyes. What is happening? The figures around them blurred together, obscured in an unnatural haze. Yet amidst the panic, a footstep crushed the silence. Someone emerging from the darkness. Not an agent, not a fighter, but a girl. A girl he recognized. "Jessica!" he choked, his breath stalling in his throat. It was Lily's sister, the sister he thought had disappeared long ago. The stories, the rumors, they all filled his childhood with dread. "You're... how?" Her face was strained, eyes darting between Lily and the chaos. "You need to listen, Thomas. It's all a trap." The crowd gasped, confusion rippling through them. "Is that really her?" someone whispered, uncertainty clawing at each word. "I didn't survive just to let them take her," Jessica screamed, pointing at the stranger still writhing on the ground, cutting through the fog like a beacon. "They won't stop until they get what they want." The gravity of her words hit harder than a punch. Thomas looked at Lily, her small face etched with fear, and he realized just how deep their connection ran. "Lily, what does she mean?" But before she could respond, the mist erupted violently, and the stranger roared from the ground, "No! You don't understand!" A shattering gasp escaped Thomas's lips as the distortion of the stranger morphed into a familiar face. It twisted and shifted, but like a force, it unveiled truths that struck like lightning. "It's him! It's Simon!" The name felt heavy, like a loaded gun. Simon. The man who had betrayed everything Thomas thought he knew. A figure from Thomas's past he had tried to escape, returning like a haunting spectre. "Impossible!" Thomas shouted, eyes wide in disbelief. Help me. Simon choked, his features twisting painfully, each word a struggle. He's coming for her, for both of you. Thomas felt shattered pieces of his past crash into the present. You were never just a stranger. No, Simon gasped, lips trembling. I was your guardian, the one they sent to watch over you all. But they took her. We thought she was dead. Thunder cracked, shaking the ground beneath him. Jessica's voice echoed in desperation. Lily has to remember. Remember what? Lily questioned, bewildered. Everything! They're hunting you for a raisin! Simon screamed, pain threading through his voice. But the moment hung in the air, thick like fog. Desolation enveloping them all. Just then the shadows surrounding them thickened, menacing figures emerging like predators from the mist. They closed in, eyes glinting with malicious intent. Then it happened. Just when it seemed all hope was lost, a shockwave surged from Lily. It pulsed through the ground, a force of energy that knocked everyone back. Run! Thomas yelled, instinct kicking in. He pulled Lily close and steered toward the alley's mouth. But as thunder roared and the figures resumed their advance, the chaotic storm suspended around them revealed something devastating. Something he couldn't even fathom watching it unfold. The mist swirled furiously, unveiling faces layered in both deception and truth, swirling like memories in the wind. Recognizable whispers crisscrossed, and before Thomas's wide eyes, each adversary began to strip away their disguises, as if peeling back layers of a menacing truth. You think you know what's happening? The icy wind carried the voice like a shiver running down their spine. And as recognition settled, a horrifying conclusion crackled at the edges of reality. Lily wasn't just a lost girl. She was the key, a key to something. Standing at the brink of their doom, Thomas realized maybe he never knew any of them, or even who he truly was. His heart sank, clouds darkening the sky as the revelation hung heavily. Like a storm waiting to break, the truth had unraveled, and all that remained was the chaos of unanswered questions, and he was left holding on, teetering once again on the edge of everything he had believed. The world around them began to spin again. Thomas's heart pounded as the mist whirled, tightening like a noose around them. The faces of friends and foes alike blurred together, painted in shades of fear and doubt. It felt suffocating, like drowning in uncertainty. But as the mist twisted, something shifted. An unseen force rippled through the air, and all at once, Simon's body went rigid. The man gasped, his breath coming in shallow, desperate wisps. "Lily, you have to," he stammered. Panic gripped Thomas's chest. What did he want her to do? What truth lingered just beneath the surface? Through the thrumming chaos, figure after figure lit up in the mist. A gallery of past and present. The people who had shaped his life in ways he never fully understood. Thomas's breath caught. Could he trust any of them? Thomas! Jessica's voice sliced through the noise like a lifeline. You need to protect Lily! They want her power! Lily's eyes widened, shining with fear and confusion. What power? She whispered, her small frame trembling. But before they could unravel the tangled web of truth, the mist surged. With a deafening sound, the shadows sprang to life, jerking toward them with blinding speed. Thomas instinctively tightened his grip on Lily, pulling her closer. Stay with me! Just then, Another figure emerged, slipping through the metallic scent of rain. It was a woman, moving gracefully despite the chaos, her eyes deep like pools of secrets. She locked her gaze onto Thomas, and his breath hitched. "Elsa!" he gasped, recognizing the face of the past he had spent years trying to forget. "I'm here to help you! I'm your sister!" The world dulled around them, words hanging heavy in the air, stretching time itself. No, Thomas felt as if the ground was collapsing beneath him. That can't be true. The wind howled, swirling threats and confusion. What was happening? A distant roar echoed from behind. More figures swarmed toward them. "Leave her alone!" shouted the man in the suit. But his voice froze under the weight of impending disaster. The brightness of the mist flickered and a flash of recognition struck. Thomas had seen this woman before, had thought her lost, buried under layers of regret. "Elsa, you're alive?" His voice cracked. "But how? I thought I was too," she cried out, anguish etched across her face. Then her eyes shifted, locking onto Lily. "But we need to move! They're coming!" A snap of branches echoed as the shadows surged closer. Figures cloaked in darkness, stretching like monsters from a fairy tale. But before Thomas could react, Lily stepped forward, her small voice rising above the uproar. "I know who I am!" The air seemed to still, hearts pausing. Her eyes shined bright, fierce. "I'm not just a girl. I'm part of this!" The wild energy poured from her, nothing like he'd seen before. It rippled, each pulse colliding with Thomas's own, unifying, shocking, like lightning through his veins. "Lily, no!" But she stood resolute, centered in the chaos, an anchor in the storm. A line of force crackled in the air, wrapping around her in soft, radiant light. "Stop!" someone screamed, but it felt like a whisper against the roar. Then, in a surge of power, the ground shook violently, and truth erupted like a volcano. Shadows dissolved into blinding light. A scream broke the air. "No!" Everything changed. In that flash, whispers transformed into shouts. A mural of identities revealed at once, crumpling before him. Thomas's breath stopped. "What did you do?" he choked. "What just happened?" And then he saw it. The face of the one he had trusted most. Elsa's features morphed into something sinister, a sneer cascading across her lips. "You were the last piece to the puzzle, Thomas. But you never understood. Reality shattered. Everything he thought was solid began to plummet into darkness. As panic surged, he realized the truth he'd held onto had turned into a weapon against him. A betrayal, woven deep into the fabric of their lives. "I'm not your sister!" Her voice sliced through him like ice. "Who are you?" And the world faded to black, leaving Thomas suspended in a spiral of haunting echoes. Every thread of his life pulling tighter, weaving a net he could not escape. The world faded to black, leaving Thomas suspended in a spiral of haunting echoes. Every thread of his life pulling tighter, weaving a net he could not escape. But then, a crack, brilliant and blinding, split the darkness. illuminating everything around him. Thomas shielded his eyes, heart racing. He felt a surge, a rush of energy unlike anything he had ever fathomed. The shadows twisted, forming shapes, and in that cascade of brilliance, he heard a voice, a soft whisper that cut through the chaos. "Wake up." But there was something different. The mist that had threatened to consume them now shimmered, almost ethereal, like a veil staring with hidden truths. "Lily!" he breathed, turning to her. But she remains transfixed, her gaze locked on the figure of Elsa, no longer just an apparition from his past, but something darker. "What are you?" The crowd stood paralyzed. Murmurs spiraled among them, horror painting their faces. Suddenly, Elsa stepped forward, the air thick with tension. "You don't understand, Thomas. You're the key." Her plea rang false, like a discordant note in a beautiful song. "Key to what?" he rasped, clutching Lily tighter. Before she could respond, the air crackled again. Another flash illuminated the alley, and in that instant the mist revealed, winding through the chaos, a familiar shape that swept him with shocking clarity. A young boy, lost in the dark, a boy who looked just like him. "Simon!" Thomas shouted, shock coursing through him like fire. "How is this possible?" "Because he's part of you," Elsa spat, venom lacing her tone. "A part of the past you refuse to accept." The crowd gasped collectively, eyes widening in disbelief. Thomas felt his chest tighten. Memories began crashing against him. Echoes of laughter, playful taunts, and then the reality of a family torn apart. But then something colder surfaced, brewing beneath all those memories. Lily's small hand slipped from his grip as she stepped forward, her innocence shining like a beacon. "You knew?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You knew he was my brother? What?" Thomas's breath caught, heart pounding fiercely. "Lily, no, that can't be." Elsa's smirk twisted into a scowl, eyes burning with anger. "You were never meant to escape the family, Thomas!" The truth was hidden, but it's all coming back now, and you can't run from it! In that moment, the shadows lurched, and they advanced, shifting closer, as though drawn by her words. "Lily!" Thomas shouted, a primal fear seizing him. But a different force seemed to draw her in. "Stay back! This isn't who you think she is." But Lily's gaze softened. I can feel him. Simon is part of me too." And in that rapid moment, everything snapped. A loud crack tore through the air, and the ground shook with palpable force. The figures morphed, swirling into a frenzy. "No!" Thomas cried, as he felt a tremendous push, gravity pulling him forward, spiraling into chaos. Everything spun around them, colours blending, shadows shouting secrets he wasn't ready to hear. But then something changed. The darkness sparked, igniting with an energy that surged through the crowd, rising higher than the storm above. "Please!" Lily's voice was small but filled with something powerful. "I want to know, who am I?" The shadows faltered, and then all fell silent. Thomas felt something shift within him, an unbearable weight lifting just for a moment. But before he could breathe relief, a figure emerged from the smoke, a woman cloaked in shadows. Her face was both familiar and foreign, a reflection of dangers long hidden. "What is happening?" Thomas whispered, a swell of panic echoing in his voice. "Welcome to the truth," the woman said, her voice a chilling melody. "Thomas, you've been chosen." "Chosen for what?" he asked, bewildered. But the woman only smiled, a serene, haunting smile that twisted his stomach. In that instant, the darkness exploded, the world splitting apart like a fragile thread, fracturing their reality into pieces. And as everything spiraled, a devastating thought unfurled in Thomas's mind, one that sent ice through his veins. Maybe Lily wasn't just part of this. Maybe she was the very essence of their fate. Bound in blood, secrets weaving like a dark tapestry. The haunting face seemed to flicker, revealing something shocking, something that would tear their lives apart forever. The woman lunged forward and time stopped. Thomas, caught in a desperate moment, felt the surge of hope and dread crashing around him. "Find me," she whispered, just before the world went black again, leaving him and Lily behind, with only questions echoing in the silence. The world faded to black, leaving Thomas suspended in a spiral of haunting echoes, every thread of his life pulling tighter, weaving a net he could not escape. But then a crack, brilliant and blinding, split the darkness. But there was something different. The mist that had threatened to consume them now shimmered, almost ethereal, like a veil stirring with hidden truths. "Lily!" he breathed, turning to her. But she remained transfixed, her gaze locked on the figure of Elsa, no longer just an apparition from his past, but something darker. "What are you?" The crowd stood paralyzed. Murmurs spiraled among them, horror painting their faces. Suddenly, Elsa stepped forward, the air thick with tension. "You don't understand, Thomas. You're the key." Her plea rang false, like a discordant note in a beautiful song. "Key to what?" he rasped, clutching Lily tighter. Before she could respond, the air crackled again. Another flash illuminated the alley, and in that instant, the mist revealed, winding through the chaos, a familiar shape that swept him with shocking clarity. A young boy, lost in the dark. A boy who looked just like him. "Simon!" Thomas shouted, shock coursing through him like fire. "How is this possible?" "Because he's part of you," Elsa spat, venom lacing her tone. "A part of the past you refuse to accept." The crowd gasped collectively, eyes widening in disbelief. Thomas felt his chest tighten. Memories began crashing against him. Echoes of laughter, playful taunts, and then the reality of a family torn apart. But then something colder surfaced, brewing beneath all the air seemed to still, hearts pausing. Her eyes shined bright, fierce. "I'm not just a girl. I'm part of this." And in that rapid moment, everything snapped. A loud crack tore through the air, and the ground shook with palpable force. The figures morphed, swirling into a frenzy. "No!" Thomas cried, as he felt a tremendous push, gravity pulling him forward, spiraling into chaos. Everything spun around them, colours blending, shadows shouting secrets he wasn't ready to hear. But then something changed. The darkness sparked, igniting with an energy that surged through the crowd, rising higher than the storm above. Please! Lily's voice was small, but filled with something powerful. I want to know, who was I? The shadows faltered. Then all fell silent. Thomas felt something shift within him, an unbearable weight lifting just for a moment. But before he could breathe relief, a figure emerged from the smoke. A woman cloaked in shadows. Her face was both familiar and foreign, a reflection of dangers long hidden. What is happening? Thomas whispered, a swell of panic echoing in his voice. Welcome to the truth, the woman said, her voice a chilling melody. Thomas, you've been chosen. Chosen for what? He asked, bewildered. But the woman only smiled, a serene, haunting smile that twisted his stomach. In that instant, the shadows exploded, the world splitting apart like a fragile thread, fracturing their reality into pieces. And as everything spiraled, a devastating thought unfurled in Thomas's mind, one that sent ice through his veins. Maybe Lily wasn't just part of this. Maybe she was the very essence of their fate, bound in blood, secrets weaving like a dark tapestry. The haunting face seemed to flicker, revealing something shocking, something that would tear their lives apart forever. The woman lunged forward, and time stopped. Thomas, caught in a desperate moment, felt the surge of hope and dread crashing around him. Find me, she whispered, just before the world went black again, leaving him and Lily behind with only questions echoing in the silence. And then everything erupted. A blinding flash roared to life. Thomas stumbled back, eyes wide. The shadows exploded into a storm of glowing figures, erupting from the mist, like angry spirits unleashed. They swirled around him violently, each face morphing into painful memories, every shout a secret he had buried deep. Lily gasped, eyes wide with fear. Help me, Thomas! Without thinking, he lunged toward her. But the glowing figures crashed into him, pulling him apart, twisting his body back. As he fell, he caught a glimpse of the cloaked woman's face, the familiar features suddenly twisting. She was Elsa, yes, but under layers of intent so dark he could barely recognize her. You! He roared, voice breaking with disbelief. But before he could grasp what was happening, the ambush struck. The woman threw her hands wide. Together! It's the only way! Together? His mind screamed. But in that moment, everything changed. The shadows burst around him, and a blinding light soared upward. Thomas screamed, but the sound was swallowed by a forceful cyclone. Lily was swept away, fading into the dark, while Thomas felt the sharp sensation of reality shattering. And then he was there again, in the familiarity of his childhood home, the living room cluttered with memories he had thought forgotten. But now he stood alone, all light absent. A deathly silence surrounded him, chilling him to the bone. Dark figures began to emerge. Whispers mixed, fell into his ears. Slowly, he turned, dread pooling within him, eyes wide as the truth slammed down, piercing realization. Lily was there, but so was someone else. Someone he hadn't seen in years. The shadow of his own father. You've opened the door, he breathed, more awe than accusation. Thomas's heart sank. What? No. But it was too late. The apparition flickered. A distorted image of his past rushed toward him like a wave, each face filled with pain and longing. "Now you have a choice," his father said, voice low and heavy with weight. "Join us or lose her forever." In that breathless moment, as shadows swirled around him, Thomas knew this was it. The truth about his family, the truth about himself, was no longer just a ghost. It had materialized into a reality he had never thought he would face. And he was left standing there, with a choice that felt more like a curse. A devouring darkness stretching endlessly before him. As the darkness receded, Thomas felt his grip on reality wavering, shadows swirling like spectres around him. He saw Lily in the flickering light, her wide eyes filled with determination. "I am part of this," she declared, her voice cutting through the turmoil with a piercing clarity. Luis thundered in the background, echoing through the alley, mingling with the panic and fear ensconcing every heart around them. "No, this isn't who you are," he shouted, echoing the fears that consumed him. But Lily stood firm, an ember of light in a storm of uncertainty. "Stop!" Elsa's voice rang out, desperation mixing with anger. "You don't know what you're doing." Thomas felt the weight of unchecked fear gathering like storm clouds. He turned, ready to fight for the girl who had ignited hope within him. But he was met by a cacophony of shadows, figures from his past returning to confront him, echoing phrases wrapped in pain and betrayal. "Choose!" A shadow hissed from the mist, and Thomas stepped back, each heartbeat amplifying the clamour in his ears. "Join us or lose everything!" Fear and shock coiled tightly in his chest as memories of joy and sorrow collided. What kind of choice was that? He had fought too long to let this spectre dictate his fate. Focusing on Lily, he connected with her eyes, even as flashbacks clouded his mind. "Lily, please! We can fight this together!" he yelled, determination lacing his words, reaching for her. The world trembled in agreement, but the shadows surged, a wave of despair lashing out around them. "You're all fools!" Elsa snarled, her facade unraveling as darkness flickered behind her. "You cannot escape your destiny!" The moment lingered, as time slowed, every gaze fixed on Lily, the pulse of truth radiating from her small frame. "You may have lost hope, but I won't," she challenged the dark forces that loomed. In an instant, the shadows exploded. Lily released an energy so bright it blinded all, shoving the darkness back. Thomas shielded his eyes, awe striking him. It was like witnessing dawn break, the raw power of a person embracing their truth. The storm thinned, shimmering in golden light, and collapsing shadows revealed the faces of both foe and friend, freezing in place as choice hung heavy. "Now!" Thomas shouted, pushing through, drawing strength from the light. "Let's finish this!" And together they surged forward. The shadows began to dissipate, melting away like mist in the sun. But the haunting presence of Elsa pulled back. "No! You don't understand what you're unleashing!" "That's exactly it!" Lily yelled back, her voice a beacon of hope, illuminating the dark, thick fog that had starved them for so long. We're breaking free! As the final shadows retreated, Thomas glimpsed the truth unfurling. A tapestry woven with history and choices. A family bound not just by blood, but by resilience. As the last echoes faded, he felt a newfound connection with Lily. An unbreakable bond that could shatter chains forever. Their breaths came slow and measured, the reality of their freedom sinking in like a tranquil dawn. Shadows lifted, leaving only light, warmth, and the promise of redemption behind them. "Are you all right?" Thomas asked, wrapping his arms around her, both of them buoyed by chances anew. "Yeah," Lily smiled, tears mingling with joy. "I think we can face anything now." But just when it felt like the fight was over, a rumble in the distance reminded them shadows weren't entirely gone. "We must remain vigilant," Thomas whispered, glancing back at the retreating figures. "This isn't finished. We have to prepare." Lily nodded. "Together," she affirmed, determination sparking in her eyes. The world outside was still a blur of uncertainty, but standing side by side, they felt strength coursing through them. They'd faced the darkness and emerged, but the shadows lingered on the horizon, waiting for another chance. This was just the beginning. Before they could lose themselves in reflection, the weight of uncertainty engulfed them anew, their pasts unveiling riddles that echoed deep in their souls. What lay ahead, and who else might emerge from the darkness? Dare to stay in touch with this unfolding saga? You need to subscribe now to catch every exclusive moment of our journey. Hit that like button at this very second to fuel our community. Flood the comments with your thoughts, reactions, and theories about this gripping end. And don't wait one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who deserve the thrill of this story. Your support holds the key to this channel's future. And only you can ensure we continue to craft and unravel these worlds too.